All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining me today. Kind of a fun project. We are taking a tractor back to stock. You don't really hear that very often, but it was a hot farm tractor, whatever class that was in. And so 500-600 horse, who only knows. But yeah, we're gonna take it back to stock, and hopefully it will be a great tractor for somebody. And but I want to show you that clutch there. That thing has to be a work of art. It's simple, but it's just such a work of art. Look at that. That is almost pretty. I mean, you look at the welds in there, and just overall, it's just a beautiful piece of metal art. How your permaclutch works is so your thrust or throw out bearing actually comes out to engage the clutch, and same with your PTO. Your PTO is this outer one, and it would come out to the second set of fingers. But this clutch eliminated the PTO and allowed several more discs for the traction clutch, because they had enough horsepower on the engine and enough traction on the rear end that the permaclutch lost the battle. And you can see the one exposed burn mark right there. So we'll put him back to stock. We already got the turbo back to stock. The housings look very similar on the outside, but the one of the huge difference is this intake impeller. And so the stock one would be quite a bit smaller in this area, and then would not have this extra opening around here. And so that thing was able to eat a lot more air. You got the big inline pump versus the small one that's on there now, so it was able to push a lot more fuel. And here's the regular inline pump, and the fuel lines are much bigger. They went from like a 65 to a 95 thousandths line, so they could handle the flow rate, and the injector tip was a lot higher volume injector tip, and we don't have the injectors back. They're getting stock tips put in it, but then we're going to give the tractor a good service. I'll inspect the hydraulic oil and see what we think of that. For sure it's getting filters changed, but if that oil seems burnt or dirty, then we'll drop that oil. And yeah, pretty kind of a fun little project you don't get to do every day. But we'll get this clutch off, and we'll get the permaclutch on, and then you can see what that permaclutch looks like. All right, so there, zoom out a little bit. So there's your PTO fingers and your traction fingers. We got everything set. It's kind of a different tool, and when I do the 4430, I'll show you the tool in use. But it's a little different than most tools, because you have to use the tool to preload the clutch, so to speak. But it's super simple. It just bolts across from a bolt to another bolt, and then it just sits in here, and you just bring these fingers up to the tool at a certain inch pound, and then the PTO you preload it here, and then bring these up. And pretty simple, but we're all Loctited, jam nut, cotter keys are on, and our gasket's in place. I'm just gonna give this shaft a quick deburr, and then we'll see if we can't get the girl to go together. All right, so he's back together. Now it's just basically button up a few electrical connections and put the battery boxes back on, and the air conditioning and the steering, and we're back together. Point of note, note of order, point of order, court of law: do not ever pull these tractors with the bolts and just refit back together. You will break very expensive stuff internally. As you bring it together, you rock it together until you're pretty much solid. You'll hear it bump, bump, bump. Then you can use a bolt to hold it in place, finger tight. Then turn your PTO shaft, and then pry with a screwdriver on the flywheel, and eventually you rock the front axle, the front tire, and she'll come together a little bit more, and then catch your bolt up, that kind of deal. But never ever suck them bolts in. And on any quad range transmission, on every quad range transmission that you are going back together, remove your top link, and this is the hex shaft that drives your transmission pump. It keys into the back of the crankshaft. And so now that we're back together, we can push him in, and then you'd take a pair of pliers, and he is all the way in, but you would take, I don't know where I set my pliers, but you'll take a pair of pliers and bite it and rock it as you're pushing in, and you'll feel it shove in. And then you have the cap and the bushing in the cap, and you put them in by hand. Make sure that you can spin that in by hand. If you can't spin that in by hand, then the shaft isn't in the crankshaft all the way. So just a couple, there's my pliers. They're right in my pocket, for Pete's sakes. So I got just my coolant hoses and a couple plugins and some of this miscellaneous stuff. Then I can finish the gaskets came in for the turbo. UPS guy was here, so we got all them boxes to get organized, and go get them assigned to each customer. And then I can look for, I don't have to look, my boxes came in the other day, so I can finish this up, get the battery boxes. Oh boy. Then hopefully by the end of the day, we are just simply waiting on injectors to come back. Don't know when they'll come back. I just got to get another mop up after I get the jacks and stumps out of here, and we're good to go. Yeah, easy peasy. All right, so for the most part, the tractor's buttoned up. I got to just swap out the pulling drawbar, put the third link back on, cab filters, the air filter, new engine filters on, transmission hydraulic filters are in, pumping the engine oil with the new, so you can see the meter going there, that's on quarts, and we got a little pumping station working away there, and that works really nice, so we're not carrying, you fill out of a spigot into a container and you're walking that all the way across the shop, dripping oil the whole way. So hopefully these things will help us keep the oil nice and clean, and keep the shop nice and clean. That works slick, but I just got to kind of do a little housekeeping and organizing around the tractor, and a few minor things, and waiting for the fuel filter base to show up. And here we're at 20 quarts. We'll check the dipstick, but for the most part, we're if the fuel filter base was here, we would be driving it and it would be done, but that'll be in the morning. But yeah, so that's where we're at. Getting the fuel system primed. I got all the injector lines still loose. I leave this cracked. Pump 60, 70 times until this stops getting a mix of fuel and air, till it's just nice clean fuel. Tighten this up, give it another 20 or 30 pumps, and you can, with one hand on this line, you can feel it if you get air bubbles coming through. And then crank the engine over, and you should see fuel popping like that. So now we'll tighten all them lines, and hopefully she'll run. Well, there she is, running nice. I'm going to take it down the road for a little drive, make sure that the clutch is working good for shifting gears, and just, get a little bit of idle time or run time, just so there's no leaks or anything like that. And then we'll get it back in the shop, and tomorrow I'll get the while it's in the wash bay, I'll get the pulling hitch swapped out and get her washed off and get the hood back on. All right, test drive went good, rides like a dream, shifts like a dream, clutch is working awesome, smooth engagement, and yeah, works really nice. Going down the road, you push the clutch in and take your 1, 2, 3, 4 lever, click into neutral, C to D, and then click right into 3 and let the clutch out and snap to 4 and hit the throttle, puff of smoke, and just tears off. What a gorgeous tractor. Rides and drives straight. Oh boy, what a gorgeous tractor. And so tomorrow, bath and hood, and just double check for any injector leaks or anything like that. And boom, yeah. This one's wrapped up.